Welcome back. This is Most Days. My name is Courtney. I am here with my husband, Kevin, and this is our special segment called Naptime with Kevin and Courtney, where we talk while our kids nap and we stop talking when they wake up. We've got the monitor here. They are both laying down, so we might have time to talk. We'll see. Okay, so what I want to talk about is default parenting or the default parent. And that's something that I think is a really common concept among all parents. And when it becomes a problem is when both people work. And it's something we've worked through and I think we've gotten a lot better at. And I think that being the default parent leads to a good amount of burnout. And considering that I want to talk about burnout on this podcast, and I want to talk about how to avoid becoming the default parent or avoid letting your spouse become the default parent. So, first, I'll start with a definition of what it is. I know you know, but maybe listeners don't know the phrase. The default parent is the one that knows everything, the one that everybody contacts in regards to the children. So the one that communicates with the babysitter and with the grandparents, and the one who not necessarily packs the lunches, but the one who knows what is left for lunches in the fridge, the one who makes the grocery list, the one who knows when we need new clothes, the one who knows what size diapers the kids wear. All of those things tend to fall on mom because, and I think it's just a natural progression from like pregnancy, breastfeeding, then this. But once the baby's weaned, and like ours are almost 4 and 2, you can offer just as much as I can. And any father, right? Once you're done breastfeeding, you can offer just as much as the mother can. But it just naturally falls on the mom. It tends to fall on the mom. So we went through periods of time, I would say it was worse with our second, I think, if I remember correctly. The conversations we had to kind of correct the problem was worse after Denny, right?
Probably, because everything was just then more of a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
Probably worse.
I don't remember. I know we've had these conversations, but I honestly don't remember how long ago they were.
With Denny, just because we had so many other things going on that like there was a magnifying glass on everything, and I think you were under a lot more just pressure and strain. Yeah, for sure.
So one thing I did wrong, I think, during that time, and still probably do wrong, is I don't communicate quickly enough when I'm feeling overwhelmed and burned out. I tend to want to take it all on and fix it all and pretend like I'm super mom, and asking for help feels like failure. And I think that's a common theme among women, especially, like I said, women who are also working. And so we learned that we needed to communicate early and often about this problem in particular. So I want to know, like, from a man's perspective, when I came to you and, well, I didn't necessarily like come to you and say, hey, I need more help. It ended up, I'm like crying and, freaking out. And you're like, what the heck's going on? And then I tell you that I feel this way after letting it fester. So that's on me. But what was your like first take when I told you that I was feeling that way?
Defensive. Yeah, immediately defensive. I mean, for probably several reasons, but first, I think a lot of it was because our life would be seemingly normal, like in terms of how our days were going, the workload that I felt like, or just like the stress that you feel in the house, or just how things were going, and like everything felt good and fine and copacetic, and everything was fine. And then, like you said, it would just take one thing. Something would boil over. Next thing I know, you're crying, and I'm the bad guy because I've been, not living up to my end of the bargain for, let's just say weeks or months or whatever the case may be. So that was, I think, I remember feeling always very defensive because it felt like you had kept this thing from me. Like my teammate had kept the load she was carrying from me, and I, putting on a pretty face and not really letting on that there was any kind of imbalance or something wrong until it was too wrong. And then now I'm like repairing things. And that always feels unfair. And like, I think it just feels immediately like you're just on the defense. And that's something I think I've And I still probably would feel that way right now if we had that kind of argument, because I think it's just natural to feel like blindsided to some degree. So I think the biggest leap forward in that situation is just to kind of fight that defensive feeling as hard as it is. I do remember sitting right there on that couch in several moments like that, feeling very like, bite my tongue. This, like that's the problem. I think ultimately what I eventually realized is even if I'm defensive and I feel like it wasn't handled properly on your end or whatever, like this, it's how you feel. And so regardless of how we got to that point, it's how you feel. And I have never felt that way, right? So I've never felt like,
like I'm not carrying my fair share.
yeah, like I've never felt like, oh my God, like this is just totally out of whack. And if I ever have, I usually would say it like something about it right away, regardless of how you've handled it or that you should have told me about this earlier, or we should have talked about it or set something up differently. It's how you feel right now. And so that's what we need to talk about and fix.
Yeah. Well, that's the hardest part of like any argument as a couple is trying to put yourself in the other person's shoes and realizing that they're upset, whether or not you think it's a valid reason or whether or not you feel it's fair. I think looking back and still now, we women, or at least me, I'll speak for myself, it like sneaks up on me, these problems, like, or the problem of feeling like the default parent. You travel a lot more than I do. And so I think sometimes it creeps up during those times because obviously I'm the default parent while you're gone. Like I'm the only parent while you're gone. And then when you come back, I tend to just like keep the responsibility and you've got your own, things to deal with upon arriving home. And I noticed that we're better now, like I said, but it used to just like creep up. Like I'd realize after a couple weeks that I didn't notice it was happening and then it was happening again. And then we'd have the conversation again, So now the advice I could give is you almost have to like preemptively and purposefully redistribute responsibility as the one that feels like who has it all. Like I'll have days where I'll say, hey, I need you to do dinner, or I need you to 100% handle this one thing. Not, I'm going to tell you exactly what I want you to make for dinner and I'm going to prep it. And all I need you to do is throw the burgers on the grill. But like, hey, I'm going to stay late to work and I need you to do dinner 100%. And that's really hard for control freaks like me to do. And I think that was also a problem we had when we were trying to transfer some responsibility back and forth was I didn't want to give it up. I'd be like, I need someone to go to the grocery store, and you love going to the store. I hate going to the store. And then I didn't like what you brought home from the grocery store. And so what I've learned is I have to, like I said, preemptively and purposefully redistribute the responsibility, but then also give up the power and control. And that's really difficult for me. And I would assume difficult for the type of people that might be listening to this podcast. But I will say on the other side, my mental health has drastically improved since doing so, and learning to give up some control was really important.
Yeah. Well, to that point, I think giving up control on both sides, whether it's you or me, is probably a super healthy thing, especially when it goes, because like in the grand scheme, some of these little things that we're really particular about aren't that big a deal, like which freaking milk you choose or which whatever it is.
Don't get the wrong milk though. That's annoying.
I know. But my point is that like I think a lot of times, I mean, I would see you get really worked up about having things done a particular way, managing how something happens. And for me, the beginning of parenthood was, obviously for both of us, neither of us were ever parents before. So there's like a lot of new things.
I hadn't told you.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure.
She's grown now.
I've been a parent for a long time. I just didn't know it. Both of us were learning how to do this for the first time together. And I think for me, and maybe for a lot of men, fathers in situations like this where, you're following someone's lead, or you're married to a control freak, frankly. I think in a lot of those circumstances, you tend to become afraid of especially, I remember the first few times I was home alone with the kids when you would leave for a couple nights or something like that. It was so tense. I'm so worried about making sure everything went according to their routines and their schedules, the way you would do
My
things. And
routines, my
well,
schedules.
yeah,
Yeah.
but what the kids become accustomed
Well,
to,
yeah,
all
but
that kind of stuff.
yeah.
Yes, but your routines and the things like that. But, and I don't want to paint a picture as if like I've just been a freaking fly on the wall.
No, I
And
just mean like I remember you saying that you felt like you were kind of just trying to replicate me or replace me when I was gone rather than like being just doing your own thing, having your own. And if
yeah,
your routine
yeah,
is different than my routine, it's
to
not a
some
big deal.
degree, I think when I started to realize some of the true weight of like the default parenting that role that, you know, you take on was during those times of I'm the only parent now.
Mhm.
So, because like a lot of the things that we would do, whether it's like giving kids certain our kids medicine when they were sick or certain sleep routines or whatever it is, when you're doing it with a teammate, it's kind of freeing. When you're doing it with somebody else there, you don't realize how much is carried by somebody else as well until they're not there. And so I think that was kind of a huge awakening in two ways. One of them was like, oh shit, this is just nonstop. Like it's constant. Like even when dinner's done or when naps happening or whatever, you're just thinking about how to make the rest of the day go smoothly or how to prepare for the next thing. But the other freeing part of it was when I realized that not every little thing is that big of a deal. And I get to kind of make this up as I go, and I get to figure out how to parent how I want to parent and how it works for me and how it works for my relationship with my kids, not necessarily how our kids relate to you or us. You know, obviously we want consistency in our kids' lives, and we've got amazing children, so they're super resilient and flexible, but a huge level of like empowerment, and it's kind of a soft word or whatever, but like once I realized, oh, I got this, and like it was confidence and like not needing to ask you questions about X, Y, and Z, or really fearful about any of these things because if they don't go to bed right at 6:30, like it is what it is. You got to make it work for you. And I realized then I'm in a much better place. I'm having a much better time. The kids are having a much better time. It was a cool leap forward as a parent because I started to feel super confident and just frankly enjoying parenting soloing a lot more once I was doing it just my way.
Yeah. Well, and again, that goes back to like the mom or whoever the default parent is giving up some control. If I'm out of town and you're asking me every move to make, then this doesn't work. And so we learned that too. Like when I first would go out of town, we both travel for work, sometimes together, sometimes separately. He travels a lot more. But I remember going out of town when Denny was a baby and you stayed home and we talked like every 5 minutes, remember? Because he got the flu. I mean, it was like the worst situation. He was an infant. And but we talked constantly, and it was in no way, shape, or form a break for me from parenting. If anything, it was more stressful because I'm trying to tell you every move to make. Then as we grew, and again, that was like a bad situation because you're at home with a screaming fever kid.
With colic.
Colicky, screaming,
and a flu and
fever.
a fever. And all that
It
shit,
was so bad. But where was I going? Now I'm just thinking of Denny with a fever. But as we grew in our relationship and as we grew as parents, now, like I just did my girls' weekend a month ago or so, and you didn't ask me anything at all. And I know that you're doing that on purpose. I know now you don't really need to ask me anything, but I know as you grew as a dad, there were probably moments where you wanted to call or text and you didn't. And I think that's a key that both people can do when the other person is in charge to not communicate about every move they make, both ways. Because I could be like, hey, it's 6:30. Are they in bed yet? Did you give them the magnesium before they went to bed? Did you make sure and change his diaper again? I don't want him to pee through his diaper. You know, like all those things that are running through my head when I'm gone, not reaching out and asking, and you not reaching out and asking, I think is huge.
Yeah, we were talking about this podcast earlier, and I think the most cliche thing that I could ever say, and the thing that people use all the time, but I do think it's so critical in the parenting dynamic, is to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And I wasn't as good at that. I've always been a pretty self-aware and like compassionate, person, and we've got a great, communication in our relationship stuff. So it's always been easy, but I don't think I'd ever truly put myself in your shoes until a little while into our parenting career. And that really, I think, changes my perspective on a lot of things, especially when it comes to like like just like traveling, So like, yeah, I travel more than you do. Um, and a lot of times when I travel, I don't like, you don't like, we talk, of course, but it's not about like, what should I do with the kids? What
Mhm.
should I do? Or like asking me questions. So there's, I think me like changing in terms of like how much I communicate with you when you're gone about the children. A lot of that started with just like, if I was you, I would be freaking annoyed. Really trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And it takes, you got to swallow some humble pride for sure. Because I think my natural reaction or my natural instinct as a man too, a lot of times is to feel like, well, I'm just as much of a parent and I'm just as capable and all this shit. But I think it also really helps to like really think about it. Like even when you would say things about how you're feeling, and as much as I could disagree with them, as much as I could say like that's total BS. Like I'm here, I do all this other things that you're not paying attention to, blah 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 blah. It doesn't really matter. Like I'll say those things and we can hash that out. But at the end of the day, you feel the way you feel, and that's what we got to deal with. Because like you're not going to stop feeling imbalanced or overloaded or overworked or overburdened just because I say you shouldn't.
Right.
And because, oh, well, I'm reminding you of the other stuff that I do. And so now you're like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. I don't feel this way anymore.
That back and forth tit for tat. Well, you don't see all the things I do. I remember us doing that. And first of all, not healthy thing to do. Like not a good place to be, if anything. Stepping back and like showing each other more gratitude when we do notice the things that the other person did, I feel like helped us. Secondly, as the default parent in that from that perspective, when you would say like, oh, you don't see the things I do. You didn't see that I clean the kitchen or unload the dishwasher or whatever. For us, for the default parent, the things that you don't see are the things that nobody sees. And that's really, I think, where people get burned out and where this becomes a problem is the mental load. It's not who empties the dishwasher, it's who knows everything, you know? And it's hard to offload the mental load. I literally follow a woman on Instagram who talks about this, and she sells I think I told you, she sells a guide of like how to transfer your mental load to your husband. And you can buy her guide for $100 or whatever. And I bet she sells a bunch of them because it's really hard to explain what it is when we say we carry the mental load. And when we first started working on this, we were more purposeful about it. Now it just comes a little more naturally. But remember, we had like a schedule for a little while, a weekly schedule.
Yeah.
And that helped because it got us, now we don't really need it. Now we just vibe a little better.
Mhm.
But for a little while, it was like, okay, Mondays, I left early to go to spin class and you were 100% on and I was 100% off. It was a morning schedule.
Yeah.
And that helped a lot because I would go to spin class and be 100% off of being mom, and you were 100% on being dad. And that started to shift that mental load, for me at least, is when I started noticing a difference there. And now I notice that you do know the things. You do carry more of it. I still carry more of it. Like and not tit for tat, but
Mhm.
it's just, I'm always going to, I think. I'm a
Yeah.
mom, and that's just natural. And that's the other thing. I don't think it's ever going to be 50-50. And I think that expecting 50-50 makes you unhappy. Like if it's just not reasonable, ladies, women. Like we are who we are. We are maternal, we are feminine, we have all these reasons why we are mom and he is dad. And I think thinking about it as like, if we don't get to like exactly 50-50 in the way we parent, you're never going to get there. It's not healthy. You're always going to be 100% mom and he's always going to be 100% dad. I don't need you to be 50% mom. Like, I think that's part of the paradigm shift I had. Is like, yeah, I am going to be the one most of the time that they come to when they get hurt. That's just natural on their part. I am going to be the one that they follow around the kitchen saying, "Mommy, mommy, mommy, mommy." That's on them. And that's their fault. But like I think expecting to for you to take on 50% of my job is unreasonable. I think it's shifting the responsibilities a little bit. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. We live in a time when social media, I feel like really influences a lot of what we think we should be,
Mhm.
and like, especially with men and women, mothers and fathers, it feels like every time you open Instagram, depending on what your feed's like and your algorithm, like I know yours is, there's so many mom narratives. And I think the key maybe for us, but like is just shutting that out
It
and figuring out.
subconsciously comes in no
It
matter
does.
what.
I know,
And
but
yeah.
I mean also I don't know. So much of it is like I know it would probably be a lot more of a nice packaged, marketable thing to say. These are the three things that we did to make the defaulting parenting thing
Mhm.
easier. But so much of it is just time and patience and communication.
Communication. Those are the three things we did. Communicate, 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 and try your hardest not to be defensive and not to make everything a competition. It's really hard not to make things a competition when the thing you're talking about is, I feel like I'm carrying more of the load than you.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's naturally feels competitive. And then yeah, like you said, there's no like marketable way to put the bow on this because we're still actively working on it.
Um, the default parent, whoever you are, um, asking
Asking
for
for
help,
help.
and there's nothing wrong with that. And I get it. Like, it's not that much of a offload of mental strain if I have to tell you what to do. I'm not saying say what to do. I'm not saying like tell me how to do things, but like, I think it's pretty smart for a couple in any whatever cadence to like plan a week, plan the schedule,
Mhm.
plan the game. What's the game plan? I mean, when our two kids are up any minute now, it's like it's war. It's every man for
That's not
himself.
true.
It's every man for himself.
They're not.
Things are happening fast. Stuff goes by the wayside. So if you don't have a plan, if you
Yeah.
don't have a strategy, if you don't have some discussion, if and I aren't on the same page, that's when things go awry. So I think at least at some juncture, like having somewhat of a balance of like, hey, I could really use more help this week, or I need to focus on this week. These are the things I have on my schedule that I can't get around. These are the things that I would like to have time to do this
Mhm.
week and some flexibility
I just wrote down
from both
built-in breaks. Like,
for both sides. We both have a lot in our schedules, so communicating what you have in your schedule is the only fair thing, because I think one of the hardest things for both of us, especially early on, was like the surprise things, like, oh, I've got a meeting at 6 in the morning, or I got to go to whatever it is.
yeah,
I got
I
something I got to be, and maybe the other person was already kind of planning what they were going to do with their day, and
mhm,
that throws a huge wrench in it, and then it feels like, okay, your schedule is more important than
right.
mine. So,
Us, like, even on the weekends when we joke that we're like, we have such a big village. We have my parents, we have babysitters, and then when they're all gone, like they've been gone for 3 weeks, my parents, now we're like solo parenting. It feels like we're all on our own. And when we are on our own and we don't have built-in breaks where we can be together, we always build in breaks for each other. So like you'll go to the gym, I'll go to the office. Obviously, we have to swap because someone stays home with the kids, but we each get an hour or two. And that helps a ton because
mhm,
it feels like both of our both of our interests outside of the house are important. And for us, we work together. And so, yeah, there were so many times, there still is times where I'm like, why is your meeting more important than my meeting?
mhm,
Like, why? We work together, And we've had times where we've had to say, like, okay, it's more, even like with trips, especially when the kids were younger, with trade shows, we'd have to say, okay, it's more important that you're there. And that's a hard thing to admit when you both feel like, well, we are owners of the company, so you both obviously feel incredible amounts of ownership. It's hard to say, like, hey, it's more important for you to be there. We had to do that. And so I think overall, yeah, just communication and putting yourself in the other person's shoes.
yeah,
I remember, speaking of shoes, one of the times that I learned to let go of some control, you took it, and I remember thinking, like, this is so cool. You noticed that Grace needed shoes.
mm,
Like she just was growing out of most of her tennis shoes, and you took her to Shields, remember? And you were
mhm,
like all excited to take her to Shields, and you wanted to get her a pair. You wanted to take her to Shields just to see it, but you're like,
yeah.
I'll get her some shoes. And you came home with like $60 pink Nikes,
Heck yeah, she still loves them,
but then
still
she's
wearing
grown
them.
out of
No,
them.
she has not. She still wears them.
That cracked me up because it was like you did all these things that were perfect. You noticed she needed shoes. No, just listen, you took her out of the house. You were such a good, like, you did all these things. And then if I was a smaller, more petty person, I would have let that part ruin it because
The
I would never would have bought her $60
Oh yeah,
pink Nikes.
they
And
weren't $60 by the way.
how much were they?
$45.
Okay, I buy them like $9 Amazon shoes
Yeah.
because they grow out of them so fast. But it doesn't, what I'm saying is it didn't ruin it for me. Had I been 10% more controlling and with our budget and and my preferences, then I could have let that ruin it. And so I think that's a lesson I remember thinking like, no, that's perfect. he did all those things, and like that's the role that you want him to have. So don't
Yeah.
obsess about the $25 more that he spent on shoes than you would have spent, you know?
Yeah.
And she does love those shoes. They're just,
You can't sweat the small things. She loved them.
yeah, but
Yeah.
also, you
Loves them.
know, if we're going to spend more money on shoes, maybe make them not pink so that our son can wear them when he grows into them.
I'll
You'll
buy
just
them
buy
for him
him
too.
pink ones.
Yeah. We have a lot of new fathers in our company, in our life. And, I don't want to ever be that old guy who's like, well, this is what you should think about and do, and blah, blah, blah. But like the one little piece of advice that I've tried to say when it's appropriate to guys is to swallow your pride. That doesn't mean become some sort of beta male and don't have respect for yourself, don't stand up for yourself, or don't, have a voice in your relationship. Not at all. Like that's the opposite of what I believe. But when I say swallow your pride is that like the guys that we work with and similar to me, like we get to have a lot of fun in our life. We get to do a lot of stuff. We didn't carry a baby for 9 months. We didn't go through labor. We didn't breastfeed. We didn't do all this other stuff that frankly looks miserable, not fun, and horrible. And I would never do in a million years. And so like keep all that in perspective and don't lose sight of that stuff and swallow your pride when your partner says something to you out of needing something more from you. Because this is this is parenthood and our marriage and everything. It's like, it's for life. It's going to be a long journey and you can't sweat the small stuff. And I don't think it's wise to get too offended by things, especially when it comes to like, we're both trying to achieve the same thing here. We're trying to achieve the best life for our kids and us and make the household work well for everybody. And I know it's probably the $1 million question is how do you not get offended? Like, right, this is our whole world. Like our hearts are tied to all this stuff and our kids. So it's easy to get fired up and just, personally attached to that stuff. But I think that's always the battle is just take a step back, try to take a step outside of yourself for a minute and put your big boy pants on and, take care of people, I guess. Yeah.
You do a great job of that. I mean, I'm blessed because you're literally the most emotionally intelligent man that I've ever met. I mean, you just are. Like, it's insane how in tune you are with like me and people in general. You're just like such an empathetic person. So I'm very grateful for that. And I know not every man is like that, but also not every woman is as difficult and controlling as I am. So if that's your advice, your big piece of advice for men, my big piece of advice for women or default parents, it's women, ask for help. Like, it is not a failure to ask for help. I still have to remind myself that asking for help does not mean that I have failed or that I'm letting someone down or that I'm putting something on someone else. I always felt like I can't put upon you. And then I'm like, wait, you said it too. He's like, you said these are not your kids, Courtney. These are our kids. Like you asking for help is not like, hey, will you watch my kids for me?
Right.
And yeah, ask for help. Swallow your pride. Again, like same advice you gave. Swallow your pride, ask for help. It does not mean you failed. You will feel better after. It might be uncomfortable. You're going to have uncomfortable conversations, but the other side of having a balanced marriage is so much nicer and so much healthier. And I appreciate you.
Good. Thank you. I appreciate you too. I don't want to sound like somebody that knows it all, but we see it a lot with, plans. Like we make plans in our life or in our businesses. And sometimes you don't adjust plans quick enough. And I think that's another point and period of when there's a lot of stress and uncomfortability and problems like between us. Like if we haven't adapted, hey, we set a schedule or we set certain roles that we have or routines that we have where you usually do this, I usually do that. And maybe at some point that worked for 6 months to a year and then it doesn't work very well anymore. Change the plan, change the routine. Like let's make a new game plan. And I think that would be, we're always going to be doing that. Like that's always, especially when our kids are, 2 and 4 or 3 and 4 almost, I guess. But like things change fast, so fast.
Constantly changing.
I don't think it's human nature to like, I know I don't like when things change, but it's also human nature to like, okay, this is working. We got a routine. We got a good plan. Let's just keep it.
Yeah.
But it's not going to last. So you got to be able to adapt.
Be flexible. Yeah. Okay.
That's it.
Thank you.
That's all I got.
No, I like it.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you. This has been most days nap time with Courtney and Kevin. Thank
They're
you
still
for
asleep?
being here. Yes, they're still sleeping.
Nice.
Well, at least she is. Let's see if he is. Yep. So
Nice.
we can go pour a drink or something.
Okay, let's do it.
Thanks for being here. Subscribe to the podcast if you want to hear more stuff like this. Kevin will be on hopefully once a week.
Whenever you can afford me.
Whenever the kids are napping and he's in town. Thank you, everyone.